Michelle Rohrer, welcome to Ayesha's Lens. I have been looking forward to this conversation because when I think about leadership and legacy, I think not only about what someone achieves, but about what they leave behind, whether it's in people, culture, and the values that continue after them. And you feel like such a meaningful person to have this conversation with. And I hope you know that your leadership carries both depth and reflection and the kind of influence that stays with the people, which is why I'm so honored to have you with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And you and I have been connected virtually for quite some time because every Friday when I send out my Friday note, just for the audience to know, Ayesha is always the first one. And always, um, for several years now, she's always the very first one. And so I've had this connection about uh, curiosity about Ayesha, but also like a friendship virtual connection where every week we're like kind of saying hi to each other, where my note goes out and she says hi back. And so, and I say a quiet, hi, Ayesha, I see you, you know. So it's just a pleasure to be here with you at the podcast, and you're launching into this amazing legacy of your own through your podcast. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And for the sake of the audience, these are very precious, called Michelle's Friday notes that are shared with the world that we live in. And the reason why I'm so eager every Friday is like I'm drumming my fingers, going like, okay, her notes are coming in. These are like precious nuggets that people like I are waiting for. And my emojis are always either a shiny star or that
Mhm.
lotus flower, which I know in the Japanese culture stands for strength. I always walk away with strength, Michelle, with your
Mhm.
from your wisdom. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing your wisdom with the world through those notes.
Yeah, happy to happy to be here.
So when I think legacy,
Mm.
I feel legacy can sometimes sound like a very large word, almost distant or formal. But in reality, it often lives in very human things. So when you hear the words leadership and legacy together, what feels most alive or true to you?
I've Since you sent me some questions, Aisha, I've been thinking and letting it kind of bounce around in my head to try to uh, put into words some things that are kind of uncomfortable, right? Because there's a quiet side to leadership that's both intentional and purposeful, but also unknown. Like you don't exactly know what the outcome is going to be. And so I would say that a way that resonates for me in terms of an outcome of leadership and legacy that I would hope is um, that there is from perhaps from me, but perhaps from the culture and the work that we do, that there's a transfer of courage
Mm.
to do meaningful work, and that transfer of courage means that people that are on the receiving end of that, that of course that courage needs to come from them, but if it helps, that there's like this little voice. I continue to hear leaders that have impacted me. I hear their voice in my head, and sometimes hearing that voice then helps me to have the courage to say what needs to be said, or listen to what needs to be listened to, or corral a group, to really think through a tough problem. So I would just hope that leadership results in that transfer of courage, and that in some way my voice or my fingerprints help them to deal with the problems that they're faced with, or the challenges, or the happy things.
I love that, Michelle, because as you speak of courage, it reminds me of the vulnerability that comes along with courage.
Mhm.
And it brings down legacy from something abstract into something lived, relational, and deeply real. So thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
I wonder if sometimes people associate legacy too narrowly with title or skill or visible achievement. What do you think people misunderstand most about legacy and leadership?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that certainly when one is beginning one's career, one needs to pay a lot of attention to showing skill, and that you are an expert, and that that expertise leads to achievement. And there comes a point where that that one person, you yourself, are incapable of of scaling achievement,
Mm.
especially in a large organization. Like, you realize you can't fix everything. You can't be the one that helps through every crisis. And so that achievement focus, um, leaders who are impactful, there's a bridge at some point in one's career from achievement to this quiet, sometimes heavy responsibility. And there's you switch from that dopamine hit of achievement to this sort of, how do I responsibly build an organization that can scale to the challenges and the business that we have. And to shift that is a whole journey, because it's probably a lot clearer to understand how does one display their expertise and achieve things, and it's addictive when you achieve things, to this, hard to see someone who is a steward of both the people as well as the organization, and to understand one's unique gifts that you bring, because you are who you are, and how you use your seat in the organization to not just do what your job is, but to be responsible for an enterprise. And that responsibility shifts depending on who you are and what gifts you bring.
I love that. And that feels like such an important distinction because often the most meaningful forms of legacy, especially the examples you have shared, are the ones that never make it onto a resume, right?
Mhm.
I love that. One of the things I keep coming back to is that titles eventually move on, but the imprint someone leaves in others can stay for a very long time.
Mhm.
What has your journey taught you about the kind of impact that outlasts a title?
Oh, um, well, I think that's what I appreciate, is that uh, people share what lives from me in them. And so that uh, the fact that people who follow my note or read my note, in many ways, there's a relationship that develops, because I'm being vulnerable about myself, in certain ways, as well as sharing business context. And so there's like this ongoing dialogue, and what and I certainly know that there are words that others guiding words that others have given to me, like my postdoc mentor, Mike Cronin, gave me, um, this pearl of "the company doesn't love you." And
Mm.
I've shared that pearl with many, because it's helpful to remember. Um, and now there are other things that I have said, or sometimes I even forget that I say them, but people say, no, you said this, or I saw you do that, and that's meaningful to me. So I think understanding, being in relationship with people, it doesn't even have to be, I'm not talking about like a best friend relationship. I'm talking about like we all sit in service of whatever good we're trying to do in the world. And at our company, we happen to be in the business of health.
Mm,
We're trying to positively impact people's health. That we're kind of all standing loosely in a circle where we're holding hands. And it requires a bit of trust for us all to hold hands with each other, and understanding that we're all humans, and sometimes life happens, and so we're not quite holding hands with everybody, as that our shared outcome needs us to. So we
yeah.
need a little bit of help from others, or we need more energy flowing through those hands, because of something that's going on. And to be in relationship with people where they share with you, this mattered to me, this helped give me energy, or this helped give me a guiding light, then that helps me to understand, oh, I didn't realize that. If that helped you, that might help others. So I can amplify that pearl, right? Um, and so that's kind of, you're in this, we're always striving as an individual and as a community to help each other along the journey,
Mm.
of life, but also career. And so I've found it very helpful to have like a sounding board of how my voice helps others. And 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 sometimes it's quite surprising because I couldn't have predicted that something that I said would have helped somebody else. But uh, it makes living in this space of leadership very human
Mm.
and still normal for me. Um, it is who I am. I wouldn't know how to do it any other way. It's likely different for other people. This is just how I do leadership, which is in connection with others.
I love that. That's beautiful, Michelle. And as I'm listening to your examples and story, it makes me feel that your leadership story could be someone's survival guide and more like an imprint.
Mm,
It's amazing just to listen to
mm.
that. Thank you. I think early for in our careers, leadership can sometimes look like a delivery, capability, and performance. At least when I was
Achievement, yeah.
achievements, thank you. I felt that was who I was when I entered in this arena. But
Mhm.
over time, it often begins to feel much more like stewardship. So, over the years, how has your understanding of leadership changed, especially in terms of what leaders are really responsible for?
Oh, yeah. I guess when you ask the question, the first thing that comes to mind is that journey, that very self-reflective journey that I had to go through in order to be a leader in stewardship. And that journey, the starting place for that journey for me was that I was, very trusted, could be counted on always, uh, and yet it carried with it a, um, constant that was, I was someone who others underestimated,
Mm,
always. I always would, deliver the goods, but going into that situation, others would question, really? You're putting her on that? Um, and and when you're chronically underestimated, um, when you prove people wrong, you actually kind of can get addicted to like proving people wrong, because there's nothing more flattering than somebody telling you after you've accomplished something, saying to you, I really had my doubts, but wow, you hit it out of the park. That you get a dopamine hit from that.
Mm.
until you realize, and I had a moment where um, someone told me that, and then I didn't quite know, well, how do I be me, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to operate any other way, because that was a way of operating that worked for me, um, but it didn't work as a leader. You
Yeah.
can't be a leader and be someone that is underestimated. Um, and there was a pivotal moment where that helped me understand what I was doing that got in my own way. And in large part, what I was doing was nonverbal.
Mm.
So picture a ballroom, and each table in the ballroom one person from the table has to go up and give a readout. We were in a fancy hotel, and as I would do, I said, I'll do the readout. So I walk up to the podium, up on the stage. I give my readout. I do a beautiful job. I walk back down, sit at the table, and then there's a break, and I get in the elevator. I get in the elevator with a woman who's older than me. She's taller than me. For the audience, I'm 5 foot 3 3/4. Um, and so she leaned over to me and she's like, "You young sweet thing, you did such a good job." Now,
Wow.
keep in mind, at the time, I think I was like 43 or 44. I was the mother of two kids, two amazing daughters. And I went from that elevator into my hotel room, and I was so mad. It's like all I did was walk up, and she doesn't even know me from Adam, and she says, "Young, sweet thing." And I immediately know that as I was walking up to the podium, she underestimated me. And
Wow.
so it wasn't anything that I said. It, and I happened to meet with my coach the next day, and my coach said, "I want you to walk up like you walked up to that podium." And so I did. I can't do this on screen, but I walked up. I'm exaggerating a little bit. She's like, "Oh, I see it." It's like, really? And she says, "Now walk up to that podium, pretend to walk up to that podium like you're a respected leader,"
Wow. I
right?
I hope you can see the smile on my face, and those who are listening, they can hear the smile in my voice. It's so relatable.
Yes.
It is so
And so
relatable.
that led to a whole journey of actually working with an Aikido master, um, the whole conscious embodiment training that made me realize that we work at a very fast pace, and when you work at a fast pace, then you forget that your nonverbal communication is like 80% of the
That's
communication, and perception is reality.
I love that.
And
Speak a little
so
more if you
so the
can.
centering, yeah, so the centering technique that I learned through the conscious embodiment training really helped me just to think,
Mm,
what does the room need me to be here? How do I step into that? And just pausing for a minute. And that was a big unlock for me, that I had it within me. I'm still me. That was there all the time.
mm,
It's just like uncovering the statue that's in the stone. Like I needed that polishing in order to really be step into those shoes that were with me all the time. But
mm.
it's a centering and then bringing.
I
Yeah.
love I love that, and I think as I'm listening to your experience and story, I I think that shift is such a sign of maturity. Leadership becomes less about being impressive and more about being responsible, and you took those steps to really embody that, like you said, 80%. That's a big number of how you show up, like your body language. And I've been there, Michelle. I've heard the comments, "Oh, she is young. You're very young for this right now." And it used to infuriate me that what is it that they keep getting that?
Mhm,
I mean, I just turned 40, so what is it that they keep saying, "Oh, you're young. You got a long road ahead of you."
mhm,
I still remember it was making me smile just hearing your story, that how relatable that it was for me as well, and how much I had to work to not just from my own education and growth, but also how I'm showing up, like my body language. And
mhm.
I worked with a coach and a not only just a coach for professional coaching, but also from a body embodiment, which was so important for me. Because being from a culture where it's different for a woman to be a woman leader, I had to go through a pretty significant journey of my own. Let's just say that.
Well, and so do each of us, right? And I'm sure for the audience, you each have been given the gift of feedback and probably have feedback that you don't know what to do with, and can be confusing. And the feedback of, oh, you're chronically underestimated, didn't give me a tangible way of like seeing it. But I so thank that older woman in the elevator who was taller than I, because she put into words young sweet thing.
Mm,
um, and that was tangible for me, that, okay, I have to own that, right? That is not who I am, but there's something about what I'm doing that is causing that. And so I think just for me, there's people are trying to help, but we're so we all come with our humanness when we're giving somebody feedback. It isn't perfect, but we're trying to be truth tellers to others in our best way.
mm,
Um, and there's this leadership piece of, they're seeing something in you that they're trying to um, lead you to your best self. They're really trying to help you be that best self, that best leader in their in the way that they can. And then leaning into that as opposed to not taking it, um, then that's the journey to growth and understanding. Admittedly, there are things that you will receive. I was also told, 50% of people love you and 50% of the people hate you.
mm,
And that came at a time when I was far enough along in my leadership journey that my response was, I know and I don't care. This is me.
love it.
So I'm certainly not saying that every piece of feedback is something that you pay attention to, um, but there are critical elements of feedback that really can be gifts for you on your journey.
I love that. I love that. I sometimes think one of the deepest shifts in leadership is the moment it stops being about proving yourself, just like you said, and starts becoming about what you are responsible for holding. Was there ever a point when leadership stopped being about achievement and became more about responsibility?
Was there a moment? Yes, there was a moment. And certainly responsibility is much quieter and heavier, is more ambiguous. So I was an individual. I'm going to take you back in time. So I was an individual who was a technical expert and a people person.
Mm,
Uh, and I work in a field that is at the time not filled with people who were people. They're more technical. And so when you meet me at first, you see the impression can be that I'm more people than expert.
mhm.
Uh,
Okay.
and so there were times where when I needed to show that I was a technical expert, I pulled back on the people and only showed the technical. I gave up like assignments that were like, oh, plan this event, or, oh, let's be a community gatherer. I just like took assignments that were very technical in nature
Wow. Okay.
until the organization needed leaders that connected with people.
Mm.
And there were leaders that knew I had this people skill that wasn't being fully utilized. So the shift from achievement, showing technical mostly, right, shifted when I was asked to be the community leader of a 1,500 person organization. Um, and it's kind of ambiguous to say, like, oh, let's have you be the site head or the community leader for a 1,500 person organization. But there was a phone call. I'd like you to take this role. It wasn't a job. So it was a role in addition to my day job. And clearly I understood, oh, now they need the people.
Mm.
I'm respected now for my technical, and they can leverage my people. I'm here to serve, happy to. And then in that first week of having that responsibility, I thought, now I need to reach 1,500 people who sit in 6 different buildings on a several acre campus. There is no way that I can be with everybody. And that was the start of me thinking about what skills do I have that might help to touch 1,500 people, to bring them into a mental community that extends beyond the physical community.
Mm.
And so I thought through, well, what gifts do I have? And over the years, I had periodically written things that went viral. And so I thought, oh, I can do a Friday note that is both personal and business. And so that was the launch of the Every Friday Note. And I've now been doing that for, I think, 14 years. And it's taken different forms. It has a much larger audience now than just the 1,500. But that then the responsibility of, okay, I am in service of these 1,500, to start with a blank page every Friday and say, what am I responsible to share with these people? What is the right amount? Right is in quotes. How much personal do I share?
Mm.
Um, what world events do I comment on or not? What is important for people to understand about our business that they might not otherwise pay attention to? Um, and so that responsibility at that time periodically would come with me writing something that was like, your heart is like jumping out of your chest, because you're like, okay, I've written this, am I really going to hit send? Really, I don't know how this is going to go. This is not what the typical leader does here. And then I would hit send. And every time, if I had a note that I had written that was something like that, those notes that caused my heart to race and pound were the ones that I would get the feedback of, this was so impactful for me. And so that also then helped build the courage of, in this feedback loop. Um, and so that gift, coupled with, I have a value of wanting to make sure that there is transparency. And so I have a strong belief in being transparent, because I think that helps to create a group of individuals who stay in tuned with one another.
I I hope you can see the smile on my face and those who are listening in my voice. I did not know that was the evolution or the beginning of your famous Friday notes. That is so
Mhm.
profoundly amazing. That's amazing. And the part where you mentioned your heart beating and you're about to click, send or go live, that's exactly how I feel when I'm about to click launch
I
or whenever
bet.
the podcast is getting launched. So thank
Yes.
you. It feels like
Mhm.
such a profound shift. And the
Mhm.
example you shared is one of the clearest markers of what real leadership maturity is. So congratulations on that, Michelle. I love it. I also think some of the deepest forms of influence are the quiet ones and the ones that are hardest to measure, but easiest to feel. What parts of a leader's legacy are often invisible from your perspective, but matter the most?
Oh, um, what parts are invisible? Well, I think I think having trust in others,
Mm,
uh, letting uh, and really having that live where you trust others, meaning you let go of the outcome because you trust them so much.
mm,
Um, that part, uh, I don't. I would argue that I don't know that I don't believe it's completely invisible
mm.
because it shows up in how a function or an organization um, it, builds builds trust across a large organization. So I think it is somehow known, but it isn't necessarily something that you can like create a poster about. Like, here's how we navigate crises in our organization, or here's how we um, have built capabilities that we've stayed at pace with the changes that occur in the world. Uh, uh, Like, it isn't necessarily something you can like like it's not like these gorgeous paper flowers that are behind me. Like, it's not necessarily something tangible, uh, but it is something that's quite necessary, right?
Yeah.
And this recognizing that we're all these temporary custodians and that one can't solve big things on one's own, that is another form of courage where you have to make sure that you've got people around you that can help scale it, and take on the trust that's necessary to handle big problems.
I love that. And that really resonates with me, Michelle, because so much of what shapes us, just like you said, comes through trust, tone, steadiness, and also, I guess, the way someone makes us feel seen.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
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 And that it just you're making me think here. Just, when I was, it's certainly there are many points in our careers where we need um, we're the ones doing the achieving part,
Yeah.
right? And leaders are doing the responsibility part and guiding part, right? And when I was doing that early in my career, I experienced what it felt like to have leaders that said, "I believe in you, I trust you," right? And then when that happened, I also then experienced the growth that came.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's a part of that, uh, working to build trust in an organization so that the you trust the organization to get the work done and run the business, right?
Yeah.
Um, that when people feel that you trust them, that you believe in them, they they can achieve, they do achieve, and they grow. And
Yeah.
there's just nothing more fulfilling as a leader than to meet with somebody, say 4 years after you've given them feedback or they've taken on a big job, and you just see the growth. It is thrilling.
Yeah.
And then you I can see that there's fingerprints
Mhm.
from me to them, right? It's but you will not find footsteps, right?
Mhm.
You find fingerprints. um, and that part for me, again, it's this feedback loop of that creates momentum to just do it again and again and again.
I love that. Fingerprints versus footsteps. I'm going to write that down, Michelle. I love it. That's such a beautiful analogy you just used. I think people often remember far more than the decision itself. And sometimes it's the way a leader made them feel in the middle of it. what do you think people remember most about a leader, like you said, long after a specific moment or decision has passed?
They they remember how you made them feel.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. And I can think of one leader, is the same leader who said, "You are someone who's chronically underestimated," as I shared in the story earlier. She at the same time said, "And I was that leader years ago, and I've worked through that." But she was also the same leader that soon after I was my wedding day and honeymoon, and it was the first time that she'd seen me since that life event. And we were in a building with a very long hallway. She was at one end of the hallway, I was at the other end of the hallway. She saw me, and way at the longest point of the hallway, when she saw me, she opened her arms and walked very quickly towards me and embraced me in this big warm hug of congratulations, right? And so there's this like seeing the person um where she saw me enough to say something that I needed to hear, but she also was tracking my life and acknowledging something big. And did I want to work for that leader? You betcha. Did I want to do great things with her? Sure. Did I wish her well and still follow her? Of course. Right? There's this connection that lives beyond, because I live in respect of her. And so that then is another, she left a fingerprint on me that I want to then pass on to others as an example.
I love that. That feels so deeply true. It reminds me that legacy often lives in memory, and that's a beautiful memory you shared, not only in
Mhm,
milestone.
mhm,
I just love that.
yeah.
I also think leaders are shaping culture constantly, not
Yeah.
only in the big visible ways, but in the quieter ones that may not even notice in that moment, or we may not notice in that moment. How do leaders shape culture in ways that may not even fully realize, or they may not even fully realize at that time?
Hmm. Well, maybe just for a minute, I'll flip it on you. What do you think, Ayesha?
I feel that culture is not only built through strategy, it's built through behavior and tone and repeated example, even such as failures. And I have met wonderful leaders who have portrayed that, and not so great leaders even. And they have been, by the way, the latter have been the best teachers for me, because they reminded me what kind of leader I want to be and shape the culture in a way where I'm being vulnerable, honest, share my failures as well. And it's okay to even ask for help. Because I've been there, Michelle, where young, energetic, I got all the answers. I know my act, but they were some of the most, I got achievements, but at the same time, I was miserable. The energy was exhausting me
Ah, oh,
because I was
yes.
always on the go. And one of my teachers and a very dear friend who is a professional coach of 30 plus years, he he said something to me I'll never forget. He said, Aisha, whenever I see you, and this was, by the way, Aisha in her 20s, uh,
Mhm.
he said something to me that I'll always remember. He's like, Aisha, whenever I see you, it's like you're trying to empty the ocean with the spoon,
Oh, yes, yes, yeah.
always on the
Exhausting.
go, exhausting. And that was like, wow, is that the kind of culture I want to
Mhm,
set up for my people?
mhm,
They have families, they have their own lives. I don't
mhm,
want that kind of a culture. And that was like my wake up call, that,
mhm,
and it was small steps I took,
mhm,
conscious steps that I took that made me realize how much those small conscious steps, because I know I'm being looked at. There are people who are looking up to me, and there are people who are portraying that part of me as if though that's a norm. And I didn't want that.
mhm, mhm,
It was just my way of evolving and growing up. And I'm still learning. Let's just say
mhm.
that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would love to hear your thoughts.
Um, I love that story, "Empty the ocean with a spoon." Oh my goodness. You're making me think of, once again, like, tangible things that I do that help set culture. Um, I want leadership that is connected, leadership that is human, leadership that is, uh, um, we put our pants on one leg at a time, same as everybody else, right? And part of how I do that is, I have not had an office for many, many years. I work out of a backpack. I sit in the open space with purpose. Whenever I have time where I don't need to be behind a door, I sit where everybody sits,
Mm,
and that enables a different connection, and
yeah.
I do think a different culture. Uh, and also I make time for people. And so another practice that I do is, um, on a regular cadence, I hold office hours. People sign up for 15-minute appointments. Um, and I meet with 8 people over a 2-hour period. I never am completely off time. People respect the 15 minutes. We get right into it. Um, that builds a connection over time. The other thing that I do is I do not require extensive briefings. I get email briefings. That's a shift in culture from a time where, if there was an important governance meeting, then there would be extensive in person or virtual, full on hour-long briefings or something. Um, and so I think that kind of prep um, is is overkill. Um, so I moved us as a culture to a written briefing. If I have questions, I'll ping you. We'll get on the phone for 5-10 minutes. Um, it, and I think that also creates more of an informality, less of a bureaucratic way.
Mm,
But I think all of these kind of, I'm trying to give tangible examples, because then that is what the organization experiences.
yeah.
And and depending on how you show up, um, behind an office with a closed door always, or someone who is detached, never meets with people one on one. I'm giving like absurd examples because I think today it would be very rare to find a leadership that works this way in all things. Or like requires 2-hour briefing for a 15-minute governance meeting, um, that also sets a certain culture. What I'm describing would be a much more formal culture, a culture where I would imagine, if you were operating in that culture, you would take very careful steps. Where I prefer stepping together in more like you're dancing, in a swing class, and sometimes there's a bit of a misstep, but oops, you do a whoopsie, and you're still standing up, right?
Right. And that's such an important insight. And yes, these are no doubt tangible examples, but they're so important, Michelle. I feel that not many leaders, or they may not be not exactly following those steps, but I feel like those long 2 hours, 3 hours meeting, we speak agile, but I'm not sure we're embracing the agility that the way it's meant to. So that's such wonderful examples you just shared.
Mhm.
There's something beautiful about leadership not ending with us, but continuing in what others carry forward.
Mhm.
What do you hope younger leaders carry forward, not only from your example, but from the kind of leadership you believe in?
Oh gosh. Um, I think that just uh, being human, just remembering that we're not different than anybody else. We have our life challenges, just like everybody. Um, I would hope that that they embrace the values of transparency, believing that others can absorb a lot of information, and interpret then that business context, at the micro level that they're dealing with appropriately. And that I think, saying what needs to be said, um, and also recognizing that, that we're all standing in this circle, to make a meaningful difference in the world, and that they, when we're trying to do things that matter, it isn't going to be easy. It's going to be hard. And so we all have to really acknowledge that, as normal human beings as we all are, for sure we prefer easy. Um, but but the world needs us to have the courage to do hard, and you can't do hard by yourself. So figuring out where you can plug into that circle, no matter your technical expertise, but there is a circle of individuals that have complementary expertise to your own, where you can do work that really makes a difference for humankind and possibly the planet. And that's a very fulfilling place to to be. And if you're not working in a place like that, then it isn't something to be judgmental about or critical about. It's just a note that you can take to say, oh, well, then maybe there's some pivots,
Yeah.
that I can make to pivot to something that's different, without that pivot being filled with gossip or innuendo. That there's just a being, uh, it- being much more conscious that no company loves you. So
Mhm.
figuring out where you work and are employed, so that you use that company or that place, um, to live the life that you want to live, to leave the legacy that you want to leave. It's the opposite of the company doesn't love you. That my hope would be that people really find places, where they can use that place, um, to drive outcomes that matter to them.
I love that. And it feels like such a grounded and generous place to leave people. So one of the things I keep coming back in these conversations is that leadership evolves, our understanding deepens, and becoming never really ends. And maybe this is where I want to leave us, Michelle. Who are you still becoming?
Well, I think, I'm still becoming a writer. That's like a never-ending journey, and and it's possibly the place that writing and speaking, that's possibly the place that I'm the most curious about, growing and deepening, and I'm also becoming an individual who, in terms of my own health journey, is healthier,
Mm.
um, now than when she was younger. So, uh, and I'm becoming a mom of two young adult, daughters who are amazing, who are about to launch. One's graduating university, in June, and one is getting her master's degree. But that becoming, a parent of young adults, that's a whole new journey, right? Than the parent of young children. So, um, that's probably my um, what to say, deepest intent is to show up in a way that helps them on their journey. So becoming, and adjusting in that sense, to be someone that matters for them in their life journey.
I love it. That's beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your steadiness, and the depth of perspective you brought to this conversation. There's something so meaningful in the way you speak about leadership, not only as a responsibility, but as something that leaves a lasting imprint in people and culture and in the way others are invited to grow. So, thank you so much. It has been such an honor to have you here.
It's just been my pleasure, and I I hope that the listeners gained some pearls, some nuggets from our conversation.
They
And
did.
Ayesha, I think your podcast is off to a wonderful start. So I'll be sending you those lotus flowers and stars on your podcast episodes in the future. I wish you all the best with the podcast and the imprints that you'll no doubt leave on others.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Look forward to those emojis and your reflection comments. And for everyone listening, I hope this conversation leaves you reflecting not only what leadership asks us of, but on what it leaves in others. This has been Aisha's Lens, and I hope something from this conversation continues to live with you in the way all meaningful leadership does. Until next time.